Okay, next we're going to talk about how to paint our sunflower. So I've got my drawing here. Again, we're working in Clip Studio Paint, but the steps I'm going to show you should work for whatever medium you're going to use, whether that's digital or traditional. Here I've got my color palette of colors that I'm going to use for my sunflower. Some of these I pulled directly from my reference. Some of these, like the purple, I'll show you how we'll use that to add a little bit of value as we're working. So to start with, I'm going to take my yellow here. I'm going to grab a brush that's going to act pretty similar to if you had like an acrylic or a tempera paint. I'm just going to add some of that yellow here. Now, depending on your medium, if you're doing a traditional media like watercolor or tempera paint, you're going to want to work with this pretty quickly because I'm working digitally. I've got a little more time, but we're going to pretend like I'm working on a traditional canvas. All right, so I'm going to use my purple next, and I'm going to show you exactly why here. If you look right here at our sunflower, there's a little bit of variety in the color tones of your petals. You have a little bit of value where they're a little bit darker here towards the center of your sunflower. So I'm going to use my purple because purple and yellow are what we call complementary colors. So when I add that purple here, very lightly, you can see it kind of mixes with that yellow to make almost a brown, a neutral color. Now I could just use my brown, but using the purple adds a little bit more color to what you're doing. And it makes your overall color look a little more interesting. I'll switch back to my yellow for a second and just blend that out here. You don't want it to look just straight purple. You want it to be a nice blend between your yellow and your purple. So it just makes this area here look a little bit darker, a little bit more in shadow. I'm also going to take a little bit of white, and right here at the edge of my flower, and add a little bit of lighter value. This is called a tint. You mix a color with white. Switch back to my yellow here. And again, this technique will work no matter what your medium is, this blending of these three colors. You can see that matches pretty well the colors I've got on my flower. And you have to treat each petal like its own object. So for the second one, I'm going to follow those same steps. Starting with my yellow, and a little bit of purple in right from the center. A little bit of white. And make sure that blends all together. Now, if you're working with a dry media or digital media, so colored pencils or oil pastels, chalk pastels, or on the computer like I am, then time isn't so much of a factor. You could go in and you could put all of your yellow in first. But if you're working with a wet media like watercolor or acrylic paint or tempera paint, you want to work a little more quickly so that your paint doesn't dry, because it's much easier to blend these colors together if you're using wet paint. Otherwise, you wind up with a little too much separation in your color. So keep that in mind. What's your medium? Are you working with something that you can take your time with, fill in your flat color first, or do you need to work with something where you do each petal one at a time? Up to you. Okay, now that I've got my petals done, I'm going to look at the center of our flower here. Now, you could make up a brown by mixing your yellow and purple together, if those are the only two colors of paint that you have. Or if you've got color pencils, you could layer them on. But I think for this, it'd probably be easier to just start with a dark brown because the center is so dark. Notice it didn't really matter too much if my yellow and purple got in the side center here because this is such a dark color. See, I'm really going to be able to cover that up easily. When you're painting, it is worth noting, keep in mind the direction of your paintbrush. It doesn't matter so much on a digital program like this, but if you are doing a traditional media like color pencils or paint, the brush strokes or the pencil strokes that you make will show up. So I'm going around in this sort of circular motion because I think you will be able to see that. You always want to kind of keep that to a consistent direction. Make this nice and dark. And I am going to take just a little bit of black here. You want to be careful when you're working with black because it can really overpower anything you're doing. But I think a little bit just to emphasize some of this darkness here would be nice. Sort of short brush strokes there will help us get that sort of fuzzy texture. In fact, I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush here and come in with that. Again, I'm going for that circular motion. Emphasis on the break between the outer and inner circles there. And just as a last step, I'm going to take some of that brown and a small brush. And we can see where we've got this sort of fuzzy texture around here. I'm going to pull that out a little bit more to the outside of my flower. Very short little strokes there. It's easiest to, if you pull this from the center out, instead of going the opposite direction, you'll get a nicer sort of feathered look. Okay, I've got one thing left, and that's going to be my stem. So I've picked out a green for that. I'm going to make the size of my brush a little bit bigger. And we're just going to start with a flat green. And I'm going to pick some of that purple again. Purple in general is a really good color to use anytime you're doing like shadows. It just makes a nice, cool shadow here. I'm going to add that into my green right there with a little bit of my brown, just a little bit, just to darken that up some. We're also going to put just a tiny little bit of white right on the edge of my stem, just to show that there's some light hitting it. I'm going to blend that all with my green. And again, that's a good color combination no matter what medium you're using. Same thing for my leaf. I'm going to start with this flat green color. And let's take that mixture of purple and brown, and I'm going to run along the edge of these veins here. Just a little bit of white right along the edge. This is what we call a highlight. And blend. And that should about do it for our sunflower. All right. Again, you can use this with any medium that you want to try, any flowers that you want to try. I encourage you to go out and look at different flowers and experiment some with this. Good work.